Hello, welcome to the first episode of the Professional Forte, where we discover and we interview music professionals and their forte. My name is Savannah Deaver.
And I'm Takeru Nihara.
And we are here with a special guest, Miss Wendy-Butler. Yes.
Hi, my name is Wendy Smith-Butler. I am a professional cellist. I have been for a very long time. Currently, I am a cello player in the Houston Ballet Orchestra and the Houston Grand Opera Orchestra. And I have a private studio of cello students, and I play weddings and church jobs and a little bit of everything.
Right. We have a few questions we came up with.
Oh, it's okay.
It's okay. All right, first question. What is your favorite recording?
My favorite recording.
Yes.
Artist, piece, what?
Piece.
Okay, so, well, actually, let me do recording first.
Okay.
I think the Jacqueline Dupre version of Elgar Cello Concerto live, it cannot be beat in the world. My favorite pieces to listen to, I think it depends on my mood. I like a lot of the romantic stuff, big Strauss pieces, Mahler. I'm not a fan of Bruckner, but the big things like that, big romantic stuff.
Yes.
Wow.
Interesting.
Oh, my turn. Okay. This one. How do you create work-life balance?
Boy, that's a tough question.
It
Work-life balance. I think by the nature of my particular job with the ballet and opera, it changes every day and every week. And that's kind of what I like about it and kind of what I hate about it. Because when we're in ballet, we have a set schedule. It's some during the day, mostly at night. Opera changes more frequently in terms of the schedule. I can't really just take off a ballet or opera if I want to. I mean, I can plan it way out in advance, but it can be difficult to take things off that way. So that kind of screws up a work-life balance. But if I have to, I leave. Like on the first day of an opera rehearsal, I got a phone call that my child was throwing up at school, and I called them and I said, I'm going to be late. I have to go pick them up, you know?
Right.
So I did that, but mostly when the call comes, especially if you're a freelance musician, which would be the church job, the weddings, that kind of stuff, you just kind of do it and work the rest of your life around it.
Right.
But I do have more flexibility than somebody with a 9-to-5 job, and I like that because I'm off during the day to do fun stuff like come and interview with you guys. Because right now we're in a break between the end of ballet and the start of opera, so I have more flexibility to do stuff right now. So that's a positive.
I see. Let me do the follow-up question to that, because it's really hard to find the time in a day to do practice and do all of your rehearsals and do the jobs, right? I'm gonna ask this earlier now. It's in this question, but what's your normal day look like? Like, how does it work as a professional musician?
Well, I think it depends on which job you have. Like, I don't have a rehearsal or performance today. But on a day like I did, we just finished playing Cinderella, the ballet by Prokofiev a couple of weeks ago. And like on a Saturday, I got up in the morning and I taught 2 or 3 cello lessons, left to go play the 1:30 Cinderella, came home, made dinner for the whole family, and then played it again at night. That was a busy day, not time for anything else. I try to warm up before I go to work because I don't want to hurt my body from playing. From a standpoint, I try to take care of that so that I'm not injured. But like a day like today, I don't have a rehearsal scheduled, so I probably have my mom hat on more. And I've been dealing with Girl Scout cookies and coming to interview you guys. I have to go pick up my daughter's bike and fix a flat tire, and then, so it's a different, and I don't necessarily practice every single day now. Yeah. But, if I have something coming up, like, what did we just play in the fall? We played Parsifal, Or like last year we played Salome to end the season, a big Strauss opera. It's the hardest thing I have ever played in my life, Salome.
Wow.
And so I was practicing a couple hours a day leading up to that because I didn't want to embarrass myself. You know, I wanted to feel good about playing it. Parsifal, kind of the same thing. There were some that was more an endurance test. It was a 5-hour opera.
Oh.
And so, you know, there were breaks in the middle. You don't just sit down and play for 5 hours straight, but also, you know, there were some tricky things in that too. So I did spend a lot of time looking through that as well, not as much as Salome. But so it depends also on what's coming up. Cinderella's a challenging ballet. I've played it before, so, you know, it comes back. And I think that's also like with ballet and opera. At this point in my career, I've been playing in those groups for more than 30 years now. So there's a lot of repetition. I can play Nutcracker by memory. I don't have to practice that, you know? So it just depends on what it is we're playing.
I see. Well, thank you. Oh, so as the high schoolers, the idea of going into the music industry can be pretty intimidating. And do you have some advice for succeeding in the music industry, such as networking and making business connections?
You know, I think it's so different now than when I was growing up. When I grew up in high school, my parents were both musicians. They were music educators. So, I mean, we were kind of in tune with that. I know that I had a lot of friends whose parents know nothing about music, and that's a different challenge. But when I grew up, I was part of a music program in Michigan that was one of the best in the state, so it was not uncommon. I played in the junior symphony, I played in the local symphony, and was being paid to play from when I was in high school. And so it was not unusual, you know, to do that kind of thing. It just seemed normal to me. But going into it, networking, you know, I think once you get to wherever you're going to go, if you're in music, you're going into music, not necessarily so. You know, you'd reach out to try to connect with various contractors in the area. Teaching, you would reach out to some of the schools maybe if you wanted to do that, but as an undergrad, you're busy with classes and practicing and all of that, and it can be challenging to do that. But, you know, if that's an interest of yours, that's kind of what I like about what I do, is I do a little bit of everything. But in high school, I was teaching, and I was also playing in the local orchestra and stuff like that. So it just kind of developed from there. But I think once you stay in a city, you start to see who's booking the jobs and try to make connections that way. Houston's a pretty big city. My daughter is in music. She's an undergrad right now, and so they laugh because it's kind of nepotism with her, because my colleagues that we've developed relationships for years and years and years are like, oh man, I need a violinist, and I'm like, got one for you. But you know, she does the job, and she's gone and played for some of these people and done a fabulous job, and now she's on their call list. So you know, that is a benefit to that. So I don't know, did that answer the question?
I think so. Pretty much answered every question that I was going to ask.
And okay, I'd like to ask as a follow-up question, because you mentioned that you've been pursuing, definitely in college, music definitely in college, but also in high school. So was this performer route always the plan, or?
Yes, for me. It is always, but I think you need to know your passion. If you are not passionate about playing your instrument and wanting to follow that as a career, you're toast, because you have to be able to follow through, figure out alternatives. When I got out of my master's program, I was living in Boston. The connections were fewer between there in terms of work in the city. I auditioned and played in the Portland, Maine Symphony, which was 2 hours away. I played in the Springfield, Massachusetts Symphony, which was an hour and a half in the other direction. So I was doing it, but that wasn't enough money to pay my rent and bills. So I worked as a temp secretary, continued taking orchestral auditions. So you have to really, really want it if you're going to do it. It has to be, like my daughter's in music now, she's had tunnel vision since kindergarten. My other 3 kids, it is not their passion. You know, you have to really want it. It can't just be like, okay, I have nothing else to do, I'm going to do this. And especially, I think as a pianist, it would be challenging.
Yes.
I mean, because there's just not as many opportunities. Teaching, accompanying, maybe, you know, a handful of orchestral pianist jobs if that's a route you want to go. You know, people aren't going to pay you to just sit down and play Beethoven sonatas for the love of music.
Exactly.
You know?
Right.
It's not the reality.
Okay, well, your turn.
Yes, thank you. Okay. What has been your favorite musical experience?
That's a tough one. There's a lot of them. You mean playing-wise or otherwise?
This can take it as you will, like as you interpret it, but you can mention it as like playing-wise.
Playing-wise, I love sitting in an orchestra. That has always been what I like doing. I never wanted to be the soloist. That was just not my cup of tea. I like being part of the team. I like sitting in the middle of the orchestra and hearing it all happen around me. I mean, like I said, Salome, the hardest thing I've ever played. So much going on in that thing, and then with the singing on stage, there's a fascination to it that's just like no other. And the same even with playing 5 hours of Parsifal. You think you're just going to die in the middle of it, but then you hear something going on gorgeous, and you're like, this is why I do it. Or Cinderella, for example, since we just played it. Some of the tunes in there and some of the melodies just rip your heart out. But, you know, when I sit in an audience, like if I go to a symphony concert, it's like, where's all the sound? Because I'm used to being in the middle of it all. It's very different to go observe a concert. So I don't know if you said a favorite performance, just anything that I'm in the middle of, you know, some you're like bored out of your goal, but and you just do it anyway because it's your job and you've got to be professional and do no matter what. But yeah, sitting in the middle of something really big and the challenge of that. I mean, I remember playing Houston Grand Opera. I've played that twice. And if anybody's a cellist that's listening to it, Popper wrote an etude based on the opening of this. But what's fascinating about it is it's like, and all over the cello. And it happens in the opera about 11 o'clock at night after you've played 3.5, 4 hours. So to get there, the challenge of being able to focus and pull that off, especially the second time I played it, was very gratifying, you know? Mm-hmm. So that was interesting. But in terms of listening, I think most recently hearing my daughter's junior recital at Rice just blew me away. Blew me away. And maybe that's just because it only happened a month ago. But to hear my daughter playing like that on the violin that we had just gotten for her, it knocked me out.
I wish I was there.
I've got a recording if you want it.
Thank you. I need it. Katie is one of my big inspiration to me, so yeah.
Anyway.
Gosh, yeah.
All right.
Oh, well, you kind of mentioned this, but what are some tips for practicing playing music?
You know, it depends on where you're at in your preparation.
That's true.
For tips of practicing, if one is just starting out, I'm a big fan of figuring out, like if it's a technical passage, which would happen anywhere, like what is the skeleton of it? Like if I get this one thing right, the rest would hinge on it. So my favorite example is like there's a big double stop lick in the Saint-Saëns cello concerto, which if anybody knows that. And so, but if you look it down, it's a certain finger pattern, and if you can get that pattern down by repetitive practice, the rest will fall into place. So I like to find that, like sort of dumb it down to whatever the basic thing is, or like the technique of a shift or something like that. I think about an Eccles sonata has some big shifts in it. And so we circle the shifts in red, and you would practice those shifts 5 times a day. I remember playing Rococo variations. The last variation, which is highly technical, was very hard for me. I would make sure that I played that through the whole thing X amount of times in a day after I did the skeleton work on the octaves, for example. If I were preparing for an orchestral audition, that's a different set of skills, or like all state or something like that, anything with an orchestra thing. I find personally when I'm getting ready with that, you usually have a particular list of excerpts that you have to play, maybe not in this case for piano, but in that type of a situation, I could practice something for an inordinate amount of time and then not get to the rest. So to keep myself on track, I would write the excerpt down on a piece of paper and assign amount of time to it and set a timer. And like, okay, the theme to Beethoven 5-second movement, 10 minutes. And so I would do 10 minutes. When it's done, I threw it on the floor. So there was a satisfaction of winging it across the room, which I liked. But it also kept me focused to be able to do everything I needed to do in a day. And then, so that was a way to practice that. So I had like an A day and a B day, and I would practice, these excerpts on this day for that amount of time. But then when you get closer to it, recording yourself and listening back is a huge, huge benefit, because I still remember one student. I'm like, do you hear what you sound like? And they're like, I don't listen to myself play. I'm like, and you expect me to? So recording yourself and listening back and saying, and this was the best advice I got from a colleague in the Detroit Symphony when I played there, was when what comes back to you on the recording is what you think you played, you're ready for an audition. But when you listen back to something you've done and you're like, you're not ready, because what's coming back is not what you think you're putting out. So that's at a different point in the preparation. But I think like the skeleton, as I like to call it with my students, that solidifies your technique to the point where when you are exhilarated, which is a better word than ready to throw up on your shoes, you are more likely to resort to that because you know what to focus on as you're playing it. I don't know. Those are my tips.
That's a perfect answer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Now we're closing up. Thank you so much for watching. And anything I have to say?
Yes. Okay. Wait. Let's. How are we gonna close this?
We're gonna close this.
Thank you for having me. It's been a delight to be the first one in your interview.
Yes. Thank you so
Great.
much for
Yeah.
joining us.
Thank you so much for today. Yeah.
Please like and subscribe and tune in next time.
See you next episode.